1. I was enjoying one of my days off watching trains, wearing an orange t-shirt, jeans and boots, along with my favorite maroon hat and sunglasses. The wife sent me a message asking if I could get some paint for a project she was working on. All she needed was a sample size, and it wasn't a big one. But it would be outside, so she needed outdoor paint. As it was slow, I told her I would head over to Lowe's and get it for her, along with a screen repair kit, since the cats were trying to create sizable holes in the screens in our front window. Walking into Lowe's, I headed first to the paint section to get the color the wife needed, then headed over to get the screen kit. On the way, I wandered over to Lawn and Garden to ogle the electric lawnmowers. As I was admiring one, I hear a voice ask, "Is this the only brand of electric mower in stock?" Not being an employee, I ignored it, figuring the owner of the voice was speaking to an employee with her. My assumption was proved wrong 10 seconds later when that same voice, a lot closer, said, "Excuse me, did you hear what I asked?" Jerked out of my admiration of the info sheet for the mower I was in front of. I looked up to see a lady, perhaps in her mid-50s, glaring at me, awaiting a response. "I did hear what you asked, but I figured you were asking an employee." "I was, young man. I was asking you." I paused for a moment and looked down at my outfit to make sure I wasn't wearing a vest or a blue shirt. Nope, still an orange t-shirt. "Ma'am, I am not an employee, and I'm not sure what about my outfit gives you the indication I do. If I did work here, I would be wearing something similar to that gentleman over there," I said, pointing to an employee about 50 feet away. "But I know I've seen you here before, so you must work here." "With respect, ma'am, one could visit this place every day or once every few months like me, and still not be an employee. They would be customers, just like the both of us." "So you don't work here?" "No, ma'am, I'm afraid not. Now, had we been at Home Depot, I could understand if you had confused me for someone that worked there, since orange is their main color, but here, the main color here is blue." I could see shock, regret, and shame all wash across her face.
"Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was just at Home Depot, so my brain must have still been looking for orange. I've been trying to find a good electric mower since my gas power one died, and their section isn't good."
"Well, I visit here enough to know that if they still have at least a floor model on display, they have some in stock, even if the floor model is the last one. Got a decent grow that way a couple years ago. So it looks like your chances of finding one are good. Since I'm headed that way to get the rest of the stuff on my honey-do list, would you like me to ask that employee over there to come help you?"
"Sure," she said. "Thank you for your help."
"You're very welcome. Have a good day." As I walked by the aforementioned employee, I pointed her out to him, and he went over to her. As I was checking out a few minutes later, I see her checking out in the next lane. In a friendly tone, I asked, "Did you find one?" She looked up at me, smiled, and said,
"I did. It was the one you were looking at. Can I buy you a Gatorade as a way of saying thanks? It looks like you've been outside, and you can't take any chances with staying hydrated."
"Ma'am, you're very right about that. I wouldn't turn one down," I said. 2. Background. It's a gorgeous day out. I'm on my hour lunch, and I'm going outside to listen to some music and soak up some sunlight. I have my headphones on, the kind that go over your head, so they're really, really obvious. Listening to some music, looking forward to chill before I go back to work. I leave the store and walk around the corner. I hear something as my music switches songs, and turn to see a woman, A.L., locking her bike on the trolley rack. A.L.,
"Blah blah, bike rack."
Me, moves one side of the headphone away from my ear. "Excuse me?" A.L.,
"So when are you gonna get some bike racks?"
Me, I'm not sure, but you can ask inside at the customer service desk. I'm sure they can get a manager for you." A.L.,
"Why can't you do it?"
Me, well, I'm on my break at the moment.
A.L., "I assume you can remember it, right?"
Me, I most definitely can. However, I'm on my lunch. Any issues you have should be directed to a manager, because I can't do anything about it.
A.L., "Yes, but you're still on staff here, and I'm the customer coming to you with a complaint."
Me, a complaint? Well, then you definitely shouldn't be talking to me about it. If you want, I'll go get my manager for you right now.
A.L., "No, that's all right."
Me, it'll take 2 seconds. I proceed to go get my manager, while still being on break, I might add, explain the situation as we're walking towards her. She literally shuts up. The sass is gone. But my manager says, something about bike racks. Also, miss, I find it rude to speak to a sales assistant who is on their break the way you just did. She calls him some name and leaves. 3. I am a gamer, and was down in London to visit Eurogamer, which, for anybody who doesn't know, is a huge video game trade show that was being held at Earl's Court. That was the last year that the event was hosted there, before the building was bulldozed, and the event moved to the National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham, which is much closer to where I live and a whole bunch more convenient to get to. So I leave the event with plenty of time to travel across London to get to Euston Station to catch my train, but I misjudged the amount of time it would take me to make the journey, and ended up at the station 2 hours before my train was due. I had a seat booked on a specific train, and was informed that I had no option but to wait as the booking could not be transferred to an earlier train. So my options were to buy a whole new ticket or wait it out. I decided to do the latter. I left the station and decided to just have a walk, and try to kill as much time as I could. I remember going and buying a cold drink somewhere, and walking around some nearby stores. I was tired and aching, because I had done a lot of walking over the last 3 days and my feet were proper sore. I ended up browsing the video game section of a local HMV store. So, like the other posts in this sub, I should mention that HMV staff wear black t-shirts with the company logo on the front, and some generic "stop me if you need help" messages on the back. They often wear lanyards too. I was wearing cargo shorts and a blue PlayStation t-shirt and a baseball cap. I also had with me a wheeled backpack trolley thing, clearly not a staff member. So like I say, I am looking at video games when a guy in about his 50s, who was clearly drunk, shouts, "Oi, show me where to find this thing." He came right up to me, but I could smell the alcohol on his breath before he got real close to me. My response was, "I've never heard of it, and also I don't work here, but I'm sure if you ask the guys at the counter they can help you." He stood there gently swaying and just looking me dead in the eye for several seconds and said, "Find it for me, you ignorant cunt." He then called me a prick and an arsehole. I was not in the mood at all for this, and said, "Whatever, asshole," and grabbed my bag and walked away from him. Now I was at the back of the store and decided to go down another aisle instead of walking past him. He, in his best slurred voice, told me to get back there, and then started shouting pretty much any obscenity you can think of, and also said he was going to kick my head in. I was now about halfway through the store listening to this prick, and when I decided I'd had enough, and I turned around and shouted something like, "Shut the fuck up, you fucking pisshead." I don't remember exactly what I said. I turned back towards the door and figured I'd just go back to the train station and wait there. The next thing I hear is the sound of quickly approaching footsteps as this fucker runs right at me. I turn around to find him launching into a running headbutt. I put my hand up to defend myself and leant backwards to avoid his attack, but also tripped on my bag and was knocked off balance, and took 3 or 4 staggering steps backwards, also turning me around. Adrenaline surged through me, and my next thought was, "I'm gonna fucking kill this guy." And I actually meant it. I turned around ready to pummel the shit out of him. What I saw next was 2 ninja security guards, who I swear had appeared out of thin air, had this guy pinned on his stomach on the floor. It had only been about 2 seconds, and they had him down on the ground. He was shouting his head off as he was being restrained, and screaming every obscenity under the sun. The store manager, after hearing the disturbance, came running over from the front of the store, and asked what was going on. I just said, "Stupid pisshead trying to cause shit," and I attempted to walk away. The security guards asked him to call the police, which he did. But he also tried to stop me from leaving until they got there. I personally didn't care about that, and just wanted to leave. I was very annoyed. The manager put his arm up to try and block me. I explained to him that I had a train to catch and that I had to go. I even showed him my ticket. All the while still on the phone to the police. All the time the pisshead was still screaming and going a game. The security had got this guy to his feet and were dragging him to the back room to get him away from the other customers. As they did, he started kicking out at the shelves and knocking merchandise all over the floor. The poor manager, who was both talking to the police and shouting instructions to the security staff, failed to notice that I just walked out the door. I crossed the road outside the store and went around the corner back towards the train station. As I did, I heard the sound of approaching sirens. I returned to the station and went straight down onto the platform and waited. I still had about 40 minutes till my train arrived. I just sat down with my drink and browsed the net at my phone. About 30 minutes passed and I was approached by 2 female police officers who asked if I had just been involved in an incident in HMV. I said, yeah, some drunk guy tried to headbutt me. They said that they understood that I was about to catch a train and didn't want to disrupt that. They asked me for my details and if I was able to give them a brief statement. I said that my train was about to arrive, but I could give them a quick breakdown of what happened. One officer asked me questions while the other made notes in her notebook. I told them what happened as my train pulled into the station. After telling them, we said our goodbyes and I hopped on the train, finally happy to be going home. About a week later, I received a phone call from a police officer from my local station. He explained that he needed to take a formal written statement from me and asked if he could come see me. I was at work when I got the call, so it was not convenient to do it right there and then. So I arranged a time for me to go to the station to do it later that day. After giving the statement, I have to this day never heard back from the police regarding this matter. I have no idea who the guy was, what he was charged with, if he went to court or prison or anything like that. This would be the end of the story, except about a month later I received an email from HMV asking me if I was the same person involved in the incident in their store. I guessed that they got my email directly from the police, which at the time I considered to be a violation of the data protection laws in itself. I responded to the email saying that I was. I got an email back about an hour later, which was a prepared apology from the company for what had happened, and they offered me either £100 or £150 in-store vouchers, as a way of compensation or something like that. I have tried to find the email to confirm the amount, but unsurprisingly after so much time, I don't have it anymore. I emailed them back and said that while I appreciated the gesture, it was unnecessary, as it was not their fault for what happened. 4. Just got a job in retail. I love it, and most everybody is super nice. But already I have a handful of crazy people that make for fairly interesting stories. One of these stories is the Crazy Cushion Lady. I met Crazy Cushion Lady while I was shadowing the worker at self-checkout. Fairly easy, just help scan customers' items, check the screen to make sure nobody's trying to buy a $200 power tool, with a barcode of a $14 wrench, which is a story for another time. Maybe. Sometimes an item would be off by $1 or $2, usually because there were new tags added, and the new price hadn't been put in the system yet. And I'd have to check the tags or suspend the order while they went to take a picture of the tag. So when the lady with a cart piled high with cushions and throw pillows said that the cushions were more expensive than they were in the shelf, it wasn't unusual. What was unusual was how much she thought the cushions were off by. She rung up a cushion. That came up as around $25, and insisted that it was really only $8. The woman I was shadowing looked at me and just shook her head, and I went over to help the woman. I thought I could handle it. I'd helped a few people with similar issues, and it always turned out fine as long as I just apologized for the confusion, showed concern, and helped them sort it out and/or offered an alternative. I was a fool. An absolute goddamn fool. For the first 5 minutes it was just me scanning items and then voiding them as she checked the prices, insisting they were all wrong. Scan, check, return to the main computer, line item void, rinse, repeat. There are plenty of places in the store for checking prices, and the self-checkout is not one of them. Mainly because the key word of self-checkout is self. So the line grew longer and longer as there were only 4 machines, and this woman was taking up one of them. The woman I was shadowing kept an eye on this, but had to monitor everything else too, so I was on my own, fighting a losing battle against stupidity. Finally, I just asked her where she saw the prices. Did she give me a clear answer? Of course not. She just points to the general direction of the cushions, right next to the self-checkout. Alright, ma'am, but what shelf did you get it from? What followed was a minute-long description of the general area she found the cushions, and at the end of it, I still had no idea what she was describing. Still, I headed over to the cushion shelves, looking at everything on the shelves. I took pictures of all the tags and came back, showing her the tags and comparing them to the product names on the tags. There are a lot of similar products with vastly different prices. They're easy to mix up. I'm sorry for the confusion. I phrased it the best I could to give her an easy out. I basically did my best to open a large metaphorical door labeled "Exit." And what did she do with this verbal get-out-of-jail-free card? She took it, accepted the apology, and went to reconsider her purchases. Obviously, I'm kidding. She insisted that I was wrong, the pictures of the tags were wrong, the machine was wrong, the woman I was shadowing who backed me up was wrong, and the $25-ish cushion was in fact $8. At this point, I had her take me to the shelves, along with a few of the cushions that she insisted were $8. I took her cushions, looked at the tags, matched the names to the correct tags, and carefully explained how they were different prices, with a few apologies for the confusion thrown in for good measure. At this point, the woman picked up a different cushion, which was $8. On top of being a different pattern, it was thinner, and it was overall a lower quality product. I explained these differences, and she continued to insist that they were the same, except for the pattern. Somehow she managed to cut into the conversation every few other lines about the pillows. The pillows were another matter, because the racks hosting them were pretty picked over, and it would take a while to match it. I explained that we would look at them once we figured out the cushions, but she just bounced between the two like a mid-match tennis ball. At this point, it had maybe been 15 minutes at least, but I still couldn't convince her that they were different. She returned to the self-checkout register she'd parked her cart in front of, because of course she wasn't moving or cancelling the transaction, which was now only one item thanks to the request to void anything she scanned after she scanned them. Thankfully, the woman I was shadowing stepped in to reinforce what I was saying, at which time the woman switched to arguing with her instead. After maybe a minute or two of this, a store associate was finally called. Her transaction was cancelled, and she moved her cart to the side where she promptly began to argue with him instead. They were there for at least another 5 minutes before I went to help somebody more reasonable, and when I looked back a while later, they were both gone. From what I've heard, she just sort of gave up and didn't buy anything. Oh well. 5. I worked in a restaurant a few years ago that was located just outside of a mall. The day was some major shopping holiday, so management expected a large turnout to the restaurant, and had a ton of servers working the morning shift to handle the workload. The only problem was that everyone was in the mall, and hardly anyone came into the restaurant. Most of the staff were just standing around, and I decided that I wanted a milkshake that pretends to be coffee from everyone's favorite Seattle-based coffee chain. I asked around for anyone who wanted something and got an order of maybe 6 drinks, each with their own requirements. Skim milk in one, sugar in the raw in another, vanilla creamer in this one, etc. Wrote down the orders and went off to the coffee shop. The coffee shop was at an intersection inside the mall and was absolutely mobbed. The line was wrapped around the corner. I had nothing better to do, and I already collected orders and cash for my co-workers, so I just waited and placed my order. Several minutes later, my drinks came up. I brought them over to the prep station that has all the sugars and creamers, and began making everyone's coffee just so. I pulled out my slip of paper, and the first coffee gave me a problem. My co-worker wanted 4 packets of sugar in the raw. I looked at the sugar caddy and saw the familiar white refined sugar packets, those yellow, pink, and blue packets of sweet chemicals that are somehow different from one another, and a conspicuously empty black tray that I assumed used to have sugar in the raw. I looked over to the counter, and the employees were either a beautiful disaster or a well-oiled machine. Blenders are going, beans are being ground, the employees are shouting lingo back and forth to one another. They looked busy. I glanced back to the prep station, and it is atop some cabinets. If I worked here, I thought, I would put all the extra shit for this station in these cabinets. It felt foolish to me to go bother an employee, break them out of their rhythm, and have them come move something from my knees to my hips. I knelt down and opened the cabinet. Some lady.
Do you work here?
Me. No. I'm dressed as a waiter in all black, wearing a black apron with red lettering on it. Some lady.
Well then, what do you think you're doing?
At this point, I actually looked at her, thinking that she might work here. I guess I am kind of rummaging through cabinets, and that might not be cool. I saw she was just some lady, though, so I went back to my mission. Me. I was just looking for some, here we go, sugar in the raw. I grabbed a handful of packets and restocked the empty black tray, thinking that will be the end of it. But of course it wasn't. Some lady.
Why do you think that you can just do that? There are employees right over there. You really should have asked. It's their job anyway. You really should have told them. If they aren't going to stay on top of this, then someone really should let them know. If they're too busy, then they should just have more people working here. That one isn't even working. You should have asked her. I'm going to let them know you really shouldn't be doing this. You could have put anything in that cabinet. What were you really doing in there? I need to tell someone about this.
That was the gist of her tirade. I offered almost nothing in my defense, but stammers and the beginnings of a few sentences that were immediately cut off. She then told me to wait where I am because she is going to get the manager. Then she walked away and cut to the front of the line. I noticed that the refined sugar and pink chemicals were low, so I restocked them too, and then went back to making my co-workers' coffees. I finished up, and had 2 hands full of those compressed, recycled cardboard trays, with 6 coffees and my own barely coffee, mostly milkshake. And I'm walking away when I hear some lady,
Hey, that's him, right there.
I turned on my heels to face this random do-gooder lady, and a dead-eyed employee. Dead eyes. Sir, did you go in the cabinet and, restock the sugar? Me. Yeah. Dead eyes. And are you leaving? Me. Yeah. Dead eyes. Okay, then I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Me. Right. The random lady looked so pleased with herself. I think the nuance of the null interaction I had with Dead Eyes went right over her head. It made me super angry to see her smug smile and sense of self-satisfaction. But I'm a well-adjusted young man, so I brushed it off and went back to the restaurant. I tell it as the time I was kicked out of a coffee house for restocking their sugar caddy. I'm sorry that it was a bit anticlimactic. I still do this, by the way. I rummage through cabinets all the time. Just the other day I needed a small Slurpee lid, and did the exact same thing, except everyone left me alone. Edit. Sugar in the Raw is a brand name of raw sugar. It is specifically what my co-worker asked for, and also what the little packet said on them, so it stuck in my head over the years. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Adventures in Fast Food and Retail number 30. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Right, I'm getting the urge to start streaming. I'm just not entirely sure what to do while streaming. I was thinking of doing like a Photoshop restoration, so I may start with doing that. We'll see how it goes. We'll just do it like brief at first. We'll see how it works out. And then I thought, well, maybe if I do like a productivity stream where I work on my Sherlock Holmes script, because I really want to get that finished. Because the plan is it'll be like a YouTube community production. Or something. Like I say, I do want to try the streams and talk to you guys and just kind of expand what I'm doing here, to be perfectly frank with you. We'll see. Okay, so I think I'll head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.